Okay, Google, turn on office light. Okay, Google, set office light brightness to 100%. Yeesh, that's not a good color. Hmm. Why did the... Where did my... There we go. Okay, let's see here. So for starters, that. There. That looks like a decent color. One viewer, okay. Let's see, who do we got? Oh, that looks like it was me. Okay, we're just going to close a few of these windows that I don't really need, that aren't doing me any freaking good. And we're going to see here. Okay, I'm back up to one viewer. Who do we got? Is this anybody from Discord by chance? Who's totally expecting me to be actually talking about vectors and rotations here? What I've done here, if you are out of that, is I have connected via Telnet, which I can then make an alpha channel overlay on the screen here so that you can still see things that pass behind it. And we're just going to kind of walk through a couple of pretty quick examples of how vectors and rotations kind of work in KSP. So for starters, I posted a sample script in Discord for kOS a little bit ago, and I just kind of want to run that one real quickly here just so that we can see what that does. Run test.ks. So as you can see here, we've got three vectors that are drawn on here. The red vector is going to be your facing direction forward. I did that as facing colon vector to give us that forward number. The green vector is pitched 45 degrees. Pitched 45 degrees? That doesn't look like it's pitched 45 degrees. Let's see here. What did I put in that script? Let's just do a 90 on it just to start with. That's not quite going the way it's supposed to go. Let's see here. What did I do? Oh, that's why. Vector. Okay, I'm going to have to correct the script I posted in Discord again. Control C, run test.kOS. There we go. That's doing it the way I expected it to. Good. Okay, we're going to back out of that again and return that to being a 45. So if you are paying attention to what I did in Discord versus what I'm doing here, the reason that the vectors were just now incorrect which apparently I have an issue with telnet also. The reason that those vectors were not showing up correctly is actually the reason that people have a lot of issue with understanding it. What I had done in my script is I applied the 90 degree or 45 degree pitch directly to the forward vector of this ship. The result of that is that it pitched along the x-axis, not applying the additional pitch on top of the facing direction. So what you can see right now is I have a red vector that's facing forward, a green vector that is pitched up forward from it. If I use Q to rotate this ship, you can see that the green vector stays along with it, and you can see from my red light up here that this is my top facing direction. Then the blue vector is a 90-degree yaw applied to that same rotation. If you change the control from here to be this docking port right here, now we've got a different top direction, which these docking ports, the shielded docking ports, have a little bit of an unusual method of doing that, doing their orientation. So it's pitching this direction, and then again the blue is in the 90 degrees. So you can see that as I change the control from here, we keep our 45 degree and 90 exactly as they're supposed to be. And if I rotate the ship again, since this is now using this docking port, the rotation is around the docking port axis, you can see that the vectors rotate along with it, as they should. Now if we do control from here, now there, you'll see that the orientation changed. We're still at the exact same angle difference. So the end result here, and I'm going to work on getting myself a quick image source here for Atom. Apparently I can't do a window capture for Atom. Great. I think I can do it as a game capture. Capture a specific window. That window. Okay. Nope, that didn't work either. Okay, well I don't really know how to get it so that I can do that. Remove. So I guess I'll just do a quick display capture, which is going to mess that up. But you can see here that my code is, I first set a 0 vector that I use as my baseline when creating new vector draws. Then I made an auto updater, which returns the facing vector times 50, and then it will apply a rotation. So what I had done the first time, which I'm going to show as a manner of messing this up, is vector. We did the direction vector and then tried to rotate it 90 degrees. Display capture turns off because we don't need that anymore. So we save. And then we're going to run, run test.ks. Now this blue vector is no longer, if we keep watching it, the blue vector is now not staying at a constant angle. That's because that blue vector is taking the red vector and rotating it about a certain axis. So if I modify my script real quick to do a third vector draw or a fourth vector draw, which will do V0 or V50, 0, 0. We'll Control C that, and then we will run test.ks. And what you'll see is, I guess it's not the x-axis. 50. Control C, run test. Yes. Not around that one, so it must be that we pitch around the z-axis. Which one of those looked right? I'm not sure which one of those looked right. but that one's not right. Oh, I didn't change that. Brilliant. Set config stat to false. Clear screen. Run test.ks. I think that actually looks like that's right. So it's applying the 45, the 90-degree rotation about that y-axis, which is why as it goes, it sweeps around. As that blue arrow goes around, it sweeps around, orbiting that yellow arrow. And it orbits perpendicular to the orientation of that red arrow. So that's where that's coming from. So the yaw is along the y-axis, which is what we were expecting. I just was looking at it wrong the first time, but you can see how, from this angle, you can see how it is pivoting around that y-axis. I've got a comment here. What's the deal with the super minimalist terminal? It's sweet. Oh, the super minimalist terminal is I am using the telnet window, and I have transparency turned on. It's a way for me to be able to interact with the terminal while still showing what's underneath it, particularly when I'm doing these vector renders. It's a really important thing for me because otherwise it makes it difficult for you to actually see what's going on as the vector passes through, but you can see the red and the blue passing through that transparent window just fine. I'd kind of like to eventually make it so that we can adjust the opacity of the terminal that's in game, but that'll be one of those things that I think comes with modification as you progress through the nodes for the career mode, which means that in Sandbox you'll probably have everything that goes along with it. But that's just kind of how I'm doing that. Does that kind of make some sense? Were you in here when I went through the initial conversation showing how those vectors were rotating around? I'm going to repost this here in Discord right now so that you can see the exact code that I'm doing right now. Okay, Discord. Code currently running on my stream. There you go. So that's how I'm doing what I'm doing right now. It mostly serves to show the differences between using a vector and applying the rotation of the vector versus applying a rotation to another rotation. The green vector is a 45-degree pitch applied to the facing direction, which if I change my control here, you can see that it still stays at that 45-degree angle no matter what orientation, even though that blue icon is now rotating differently. And I'm not quite sure what it's rotating around right now. It's kind of making me think that the yaw rotation is actually around a combination of vectors, not just around one single vector, because that'll be a consistent modification, and it is definitely appearing to orbit not around the yellow vector there. My answer for anybody who's ever asking me, that looks like a procession. Yeah, I mean, that's actually an accurate way to describe it, because it will look very similar to how you get precession, because precession is the wobble that's induced in a rotating body. So it, I think, uses the cross product to determine that. I haven't done precession for a very, very long time, but that would make a lot of sense that it would be very similar. So the net result of that statement there is that if you want to try and do a pitch on an existing a direction, you use the asterisk, the multiply symbol, and that's the equivalent of applying that rotation on top of the previous rotation. If you use a plus sign, it will just add the vector components together, or the angle components together. So your pitch, yaw, and roll angular components will, if you add a rotation with a value of 130 and 5, it'll just take whatever the previous rotation is and increase the pitch by 1, increase the yaw by 30, and increase the roll by 5 degrees, as opposed to what this is doing, which is doing essentially matrix math to take the resulting direction from the first rotation, and then it applies that 45, or that 1 degree of pitch, that 30 degrees of yaw, and that 5 degrees of roll on top of that that translated coordinate system. If you want to take a universal vector and get it into local, you always apply the inverse of the local rotation. If you want to take a local rotation or a local vector and turn it into a global vector, you always apply that rotation directly, not the inverse. If you think of it as a rotation defines how the universe, or how the coordinate system is oriented. So if you take a vector of an arbitrary 0 rotation, which the game has its own default 0 rotation, and you apply a rotation to that universal vector, to that 0 rotation vector, you will get the resultant vector as if it were at that rotation. Now that resulting vector is still in universal coordinates. That's just the way that the math works on it. So you invert that, you use the inverse to undo the universal coordinates to that rotation. This can actually be very handy if you continue to think of it as using that 0 rotation. That makes it so that you can adapt it to another application. So if you have a vector that is local to a docking port, for example, to a docking port's facing direction, so you want to take that velocity, you want to make sure that the docking port has a velocity that's going 5 meters per second straight forward. So you say a vector of 0, 0, 5 to give you 5 meters per second forward on that docking port. Then you want to say, well, what's that going to be in the ship's velocity component? So you take the docking port facing direction, you inverse it, apply that to your 0.05 or 0.005. That gives it to you universal, and then you can apply it again. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. You'll take your 0.005 and you'll apply the docking port's rotation itself, giving you rotation in universal coordinates. So 0.005 turns into whatever it is in universal, and then you apply the inverse of the ship facing in order to get it into ship facing relative. So you can do this to do all sorts of methods for double checking what you want to do for your local vectors, if that makes any sense. It's now 12:15 my time, and so I think I've got a crash, but I just thought that it'd be a little easier to explain it if you had a graphic of the vectors rotating here, and you can easily see exactly how that green and that red stay in the same form, but that blue does not. So it's just a matter of keeping track of which frame of reference you're talking about. Are you talking local or are you talking universal? And making sure that you're making the conversions as needed. Sounds good. Thanks. Yep, very good. I will talk to you later. Stop.